Iva Mayaya.
Sudavacha Prathiyatam Kalapade Parinuta Kaliyadodaya Mandam Jahasa Vikuntaho Mohanam Iva Mayaya.
Okay, thank you. Sue, go ahead. Yeah. Somebody else want to chant? Okay.
No, Prabhu.
Sutta Vacha. Sutta said, Pritaya by Prita, Kunti, Itam, this, Kalapadai, by chosen words, Parinuta, being worshipped, Akila, universal, Udayaha, glories, Mandam, mildly, Jahasa, smiled, Vaikunta, the Lord, Mohayan, captivating, Eva, like, Mayaya, his mystic power. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ijai. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Purport: anything that is enchanting in the world is said to be a representation of the Lord. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by his mystic powers. But his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord, and his merciful blessings are upon them. His energy is displayed in different ways as electrical energy works in manifold capacities. Srimati Kunti Devi has prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. All his devotees worship him in that way by chosen words, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttama Shloka. No amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory, and yet is satisfied by such prayers, as the Father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of the growing child. The word Maya is used both in the sense of delusion and mercy. Herein, the word Maya is used in the sense of the Lord's mercy upon Kunti Devi. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupapadam Dadati Svapadantikam Mandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namoste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was enchanting as his mystic power. Just like Leelananda Prabhu was saying yesterday, that when one receives the smile of even a pure devotee, say if one is in the association of one of Lord Krishna's great devotees, and that devotee somehow looks upon us and smiles. Leelananda was making this point yesterday, which I really appreciated, that it can be even a life-changing moment, just to have that moment where a pure devotee casts his glance upon us and smiles. So it's an amazing blessing if we think about it, because to come across a devotee, like we may take it for granted because we're doing our best to live in the association of devotees, but we may take it for granted how rare it is to actually come across a devotee. What to speak of a devotee with, like a pure devotee, unalloyed, devotee that is completely pure and his heart is devoid of any misgivings in their service to the Lord, and is also distributing that mercy. And I think that we all may have some experience like that. Certainly we hear of disciples of Srila Prabhupada who, while they were sitting in class, perhaps, or sitting in the crowd in Prabhupada's presence, and Prabhupada looks, and there's a number of these memories, where devotees share in their memories how in that moment Prabhupada looked at them, they felt that Prabhupada looked at them, and they got some deep connection. In some cases, that glance by Prabhupada was so nourishing that it maintained their spiritual life, to the present day. And many cherish that moment, or think it was felt that Prabhupada understood them or saw them in a particular moment. And that's like a treasure that the devotee carries in their heart. Simply the glance of a pure devotee. I can remember here in this temple, one year, Indradyumna Swami came to visit. So those who were around at that time, that was, what was that? Almost 20 years ago now, I suppose. Close to 20 years ago, when 15, 20 years ago, something, Indradyumna Swami came to this temple. And he was here for less than 24 hours. But he melted everybody's heart in that time. But we had this really amazing kirtan in the temple, and he had everybody just going from the back to the front, dancing back and forth. And in this kirtan where everybody was dancing and dancing, I was also dancing at brahmachari at that time, and he just looked at me, and he just slapped me on the back of the head. I mean, just out of nowhere, with this big smile, he just whacked me right on the back of the head. And I still remember that. It was just like, it was one of the most ecstatic things that I experienced, just being like, it was an affectionate thing. It wasn't like a harsh thing. It was very affectionate. He just whacked me on the back of the head in a very kind of friendly and playful way. And I was like, wow, So even little exchanges coming from very, very exalted devotees can really move our heart in important and significant ways that continue to nourish us. So it cannot be underestimated, even the moment's association of a pure devotee. Here, Kunti Devi is getting this from the Supreme Lord himself, from hearing these prayers. Just imagine what that must be like, to have uttered prayers from one's heart and have that moment where Krishna is pleased and offers that smile as reciprocation. Like, who can imagine what that must have felt like for Kunti Devi? She was a very exalted soul herself. I'll draw from Leelananda Prabhu's class again. He was yesterday chanting, he went through all of the prayers. He read all of the prayers in Sanskrit all the way through. And then, and he's pretty good at reciting Sanskrit, but still, it's not so easy. And then I was thinking about it as he was reading it. It's like, imagine being such a personality as Kunti Devi, who could not only compose these prayers in her mind on the spot in front of the Lord, but also it could recite them in this way perfectly for the pleasure of the Lord, like spontaneously. We feel great happiness just by trying to read them and trying to understand them and discuss the prayers. But imagine what it felt like coming from Kunti Devi's heart in that moment. So it's a very beautiful moment in the Bhagavatam after she has spoken these very important prayers. Prabhupada put a lot of stress on these prayers of Kunti Devi to the point where he composed a separate book, which was, or at least a book was compiled of the prayers of Queen Kunti with Prabhupada's commentary following it. It's been a while since I read that book, so I can't remember if it's a separate commentary or if it's excerpts from Prabhupada's classes on his lectures from from that chapter. But nonetheless, there's a book, Teachings of Queen Kunti, where Prabhupada wanted this published. So it is the pleasure of the devotees to recite prayers to glorify the Lord, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttama Sloka. Prabhupada says that no amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory. Even though it's insufficient, he's very pleased. And the fact that it's insufficient, we could also look at it as it's the descriptions. A devotee cannot be satiated by hearing or trying to recite descriptions of the Lord's glories. And in fact, it is that gives us so much pleasure in Krishna consciousness, like either through actually reciting prayers, if we have the capacity, like Kunti Devi, or through the chanting of the Lord's names again and again through kirtan. But the principle is describing Krishna. Like, that's what's going on. Kunti Devi is describing the qualities of the Lord. Now, we may not be able to speak Sanskrit verses the way that Kunti Devi has done, but we can describe the Lord to the best of our capacity and we get the same result. And the example there that's very famous is Malati and Shamasundar's daughter, Saraswati, who Prabhupada was standing nearby when somebody asked the child who Krishna was, and she said Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada was very pleased by that because she was just a 5-year-old child, but she knew that much. And so because she knew that much, that's how much she repeated. And then her glorification was perfect. And it became very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. In the same way, whatever we realize about Krishna, we speak. If we speak that or share that, we offer that, then that becomes very pleasing to the Lord as well. Like in particular, when we try to share or describe Krishna's glories with, amongst ourselves and amongst those who are not yet familiar with the glories of the Lord, it's especially ecstatic because of the Sankirtan movement to somehow find a way to glorify the Lord in ways for people to understand, those who have not yet understood or connected with Lord Chaitanya or Krishna, to be able to somehow impart Krishna consciousness to others. Not only gives us great satisfaction because it is, we're doing nothing else but describing the glories of the Lord, the qualities, the characteristics. Somehow or other, when we're sharing Krishna with others, we can't but help but glorify Krishna. And while we may not be, that takes all kinds of shapes and forms, time, place, and circumstance. We may find ourselves either in a formal class, or perhaps it's in the workplace, or in some other scenario where we're trying to actually share some moment of Krishna consciousness with somebody else. And the act of doing that is not different than what Kunti Devi has done here in this chapter, glorifying the Lord, although, of course, coming from a perfected being such as Kunti Devi, spoken to the Lord himself in person, that's like the ultimate, ultimate moment. And we what we aspire for that, and we have a similar experience of whenever we try to glorify the Lord, especially to others, and the Lord becomes pleased, Srila Prabhupada becomes pleased, and this whole phenomena of glorifying the Lord, is actually at the heart of what we're all about, the Sankirtan Yajna, and about what makes us happy in Krishna consciousness. The more ways we find to glorify and magnify the Lord. King Yudhisthira, when he was trying to decide who to worship in the yajna, the big yajna that he was doing as the emperor of the world, and there were so many personalities that were present. All the great personalities were present, and they were trying to decide who should be the personality worshipped, the most important person to worship in the gathering of all the important people. And Yudhisthira was so happy to worship Krishna in that circumstance that tears were coming from his eyes as he was trying to just simply worship the Lord. That's our mood, somehow or other, in whatever situation it is, to make Krishna the pinnacle, to make Krishna the center, and to draw people's attention to Krishna through our words, through our actions, through our prayers. And somehow or other, that simple fact is the thing that makes Krishna consciousness such a wonderful and joyful. It turns the human existence into a joyful experience. So we see this tendency to offer prayers again and again and again in every chapter, practically in every episode throughout the Bhagavatam. We have this weaving of, you could say, storyline, the great personalities that we're acquainted with, and then sometimes it's some intrigue, sometimes it's a philosophical discussion. It could be anything from here, Krishna. The whole thing with Ashvatthama was just resolved, but that was like an intense part of the storyline, and it captures our mind in a certain way because the situation is so difficult, and so we're quite curious to see how the situation gets resolved. And then in the next chapter, now we're entering into deep prayers, which are just simply focused on Krishna, and the Bhagavatam kind of ebbs and flows like that. It comes, at one moment we're in some kind of intense situation that somebody's going through, trying to figure out how to please Krishna the most, or perhaps there's some intrigue building in the Bhagavatam, and then at some point something shifts, a devotee begins to speak, and all of a sudden we're reading a chapter of prayers. And so this is again and again in the Bhagavatam, and the prayers are extremely beautiful and very attractive. And some of my personal favorites actually appear in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj, he often opens up chapters with these beautiful prayers that just glorify Lord Chaitanya. Let me see if I'll just read a couple. Chaitanya Charitamrita. Here's the first verse of the second chapter of the Adi Lila. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusive truth, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. It's just beautiful. Like, the devotees have this, the pure devotees have this ability to compose prayers which are deeply, satisfying, because they glorify the Lord, and also not just by, some kind of depth of the personality or the philosophy is always revealed in these prayers. And it's always so poetic, like, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusive truth, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. We can get consumed by the crocodiles of various theories. Here's another one. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By the potency of the shelter of his lotus feet, even a fool can collect the valuable jewels of conclusive truth from the mines of the revealed scriptures. And this is like, I'll read it again. By the potency of the shelter of his lotus feet, even a fool can collect the valuable jewels of conclusive truth from the mines of the revealed scriptures. It's just so poetic and beautiful. And it's so appropriate in this case because here, and especially in the early part of the Adi Lila, Krishnadas Kaviraj is establishing through the revealed scriptures the identity of Lord Chaitanya, and then he begins his chapter. This is about the external reasons of this third chapter of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, and he's drawing from revealed scriptures not only here but throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's just so amazing. I'll read another one. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, even a foolish child can fully describe the real nature of Lord Krishna, the enjoyer of the pastimes of Raja, according to the vision of the revealed scriptures. And he's got this kind of theme that's carrying on because he himself is trying to attempt this. And so he's saying even a child can, if they get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And on and on. Like if we were to go through the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's often these little verses that at the very beginning are composed quite poetically. So I guess I'm just going through this because all of these prayers are like a treasure chest for us, and they please the Lord. And this is, we have that first, it's this tendency to offer beautiful prayers is the nature of the devotee, and that those prayers take different forms, such as very formally here in the Bhagwatam or in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We can even think of the different ways that we try to share about Krishna to others as forms of prayers. Like if we think about when we're describing to somebody how to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if we were to extract the essence of those explanations, they're often information that is found in these prayers that are left behind by great devotees, because that's where we get the information from in the first place. We try our best to, describe the Lord according to what we've heard. So often, if we're repeating properly and and trying to help others understand who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even our own words, after we've been saturated by studying Prabhupada's books for some time, they should reflect truths that are present in the prayers that come spontaneously from the mouths of pure devotees. and they kind of begin to permeate our consciousness through steady exposure. And so then when we go to describe the glories of the Lord to others, we may inadvertently, be repeating kind of these little morsels of glorification that have somehow stuck in our mind, or to speak of actually memorizing verses. I mean, that's even better. And so we are meant to take all of these, glories of the Lord that are revealed, articulated by the devotees, and somehow find ways to repeat these beautiful prayers, obviously not in Sanskrit, when we're trying to kind of share the glories of the Lord in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mood. We're not walking up to people and reciting Sanskrit prayers, but we are trying to take these same words of glorification and, according to the time, place, and circumstance, repeat the glories that we've heard from Kunti Devi and all the other great devotees. And in that way, just as we would expect, just as Kunti Devi got the result here of having Krishna smiling, and what that must have been like to be in his presence, having pleased him with prayers and to receive that smile from the Lord's lotus face, we can try to imagine. We don't I would say we don't have to imagine, but we can know that Srila Prabhupada is pleased when we try to do the same in the circumstances of our life now, when we're able to repeat these glories somehow or other to others. We can know that the pure devotee is pleased, and that will give us a certain kind of happiness that can help us to imagine what it must have been like for Kunti Devi to be in the presence of Krishna at that moment. The happiness that we experience in Krishna consciousness through glorifying the Lord is somehow a drop of what it's like to be a great personality like Kunti Devi in the presence of the Lord. So, I started off by saying that, how rare it is to actually get the association of devotees. We might take it for granted. So we have a real opulence that we get to be able to recite the Bhagwatam together and to practice practically glorifying the Lord and trying to take as much as we can from Prabhupada's purports and share our realizations about it. And all of this is a very, very wonderful activity that is uncommon. It's uncommon in this world. And even though we're a very small little handful of people that relish the Bhagavatam, it's a great, very, very great opportunity. So I think I'll just leave it there. See if anybody has any comments or questions. I see Mother Radhika is sitting in the sun.
It's so beautiful to have the two pleasures, sitting in the sun and listening to you today. Very, very beautiful. And I wanted to say two things. One of them is you started talking about and you meet the smile of the pure devotee. So that references Dvausuparno from the Upanishads, two birds sitting on the same branch, but only when their eyes meet is there connection and bliss. So that somebody who knows, if you meet their eye, the bliss is immediately evoked in us. That's Dvausuparno. So very beautiful. And also, those of you who are interested in reading different, like Jiva Goswami, his Patanjali, Pajavali, 350 verses that he wrote in Sanskrit. I've translated all of them in English. So please, I have these books available for so many years now. Anybody's interested in glorification by Jiva Goswami of Krishna. And he uses about 100 poets in that book. So please ask me.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just so much part of our identity as devotees to be attracted by prayers that are offered to Krishna and to find ways to repeat them. That's the other important piece here, right?
Yeah, and that's the point.
And it's not always so easy to figure out how
It's
to
according
repeat
to
them
time and
because
place. We often forget.
time and
I
place,
tell you.
and also time, place, and also
And that is the
sensitivity,
point.
because there's this, the point about how we're not supposed to preach the glories of the holy name to those that don't have faith or are necessarily interested in hearing it, or don't know yet that they're interested in hearing it, means that we have to deliver the descriptions of the glories of the Lord in a way that is appropriate for the development of faith that's present in the person before us. It has, we need to be able to present in a way that is relatable according to how much a person's faith has developed. And if we exceed that and go beyond what the person can appreciate or understand, it can become offensive, because a person can be, you know, can cannot appreciate, and then internally, the whole thing is not pleasing. It becomes offensive. So we have to be able to repeat our realizations and the glories of the Lord in a way that we also respect the spiritual development of the people that we speak with as well. And we have a little bit more, you could say, liberty amongst devotees who are consciously trying to increase our faith by hearing these prayers that are offered by the devotees. And but even us in different stages, there's only so much we can take in certain areas, right? we become attracted to hear the glorification of the Lord, and then the more that we hear, the more qualified we become to hear more and more. Anybody? Thank you, Hare Krishna. Anybody else have a comment?
The obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagwatam class. It's from Canto 1, Chapter 8, which is prayed by Queen Kunti. And this morning, it's a recording of a class given by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So it's Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 44. And we advise that you pick up the volumes of your listening devices. Okay. Without further ado, we start the class. Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Sutta Uvacha. Uvacha. Pritayet tam kalapadai. Dayetam kalapadai. Parinuta kilodaya. Naleodaya. Mandang jahasa vaikunto. Jahasa vaikunto. Mohayan nivamayaya. Hayan nivamayaya. Sutta uvacha. Tavada. Pritayet tam kalapadai. Tayetam kalapadai. Parinuta kilodaya. Nailodaya. Mandam jahasa vaikunto. Mohayan nivamayaya. Mohayan nivamayaya. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power.